Welcome to this humble little town of Alu, a village not far away from the nearest city called Mardan, which is just a couple of hours ride from the country's capital, Islamabad. In this village of few hundreds of people, we speak our very own mother tongue called Pashto or Pushtun. In this land of ours, we grow crops like corn, wheat, vegetables, and sugar cane, which we turn into homemade sugar for our daily needs during the winter and in the early spring. And in those hilly places, along the banks of that beautiful river, we graze animals like goats, cattle, and buffaloes that we milk out for our favorite hot black tea. And this long stretch of waterway that you see here, this is the Swat Canal. This water comes all the way from the Swat River in the upstream and passes through several towns and villages, including our very own Alu village. This beautiful canal of ours was actually built by the British when they were still here, which was intended to channel water along Mardan Plains. And yes, for this, we are grateful and proud that somehow this magnificent water irrigation system is actually considered one of the best in the world. But wait, this video is not about our village Alu, but I just really can't help myself telling you about this. Is it what we call community pride? Well, I think your guess is as good as mine. This video is actually about our wedding tradition that we have been practicing since time immemorial. Today, we are about to see how our wedding grooms and this village are thrown into the river for a very shallow reason. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. I said grooms. It's because the wedding today is not only about one groom getting married, but 3 grooms in one wedding. This is the wedding of the 3 brothers married in one occasion. In order to save costs, their father decided to hold the weddings of his 3 sons, Yasir, Maksud, and Navid, all together in his very traditional Pashto village. The father is mainly responsible for the marriage of his male children, and even after the marriage, they are still unable to stand by themselves. He is still duty-bound to take them in and support them according to his means, even if they already have children of their own. This bridal procession is purposely to take the brides from their families by the respective grooms in the nearby village. All those vehicles and parades are loaded with friends, relatives, and invited guests of the grooms. This parade of vehicles will last for at least an hour to reach the other village called Dire, about 7 kilometers from the village Alu. At this point in time, we are few blocks away from reaching one of the bride's home. As you can see here, the first groom, Yasser, was already pulled out by his friends from his car, and there he was just pushed by his friends, Adnan, Abid, Bahrawan, and Nasib, to that river, or should I say, to that creek. And just look at how Bahrawan happily clapped his hands after pushing his friend Yasser the groom into that water. Yasser, now soaked with water, is somehow trying to show his utmost patience with that forced smile as he tries to cover his body with that ripped piece of clothes that he is trying to wrap around his body, as this is a time-honored tradition in this village. He will have no choice anyway but to submit to this practice, for if he resists, he will surely come out an outcast in the face of his close friends and acquaintances. In a traditional Western wedding, the groom's taking of his bride from her parents should be his most awaited part. In this village wedding tradition, however, it may be his most dreaded part, for at this very moment he will be tested not by his in-laws, but by his closest friends in front of a cheering crowd. On the way to the home of the bride, some of the most bizarre traditions can happen. A look from this point is that another groom, Maksul, is also thrown into that creek. As we notice here, this groom's clothes are actually ripped off. That could have been done by his friends along the way. Moving forward, these people are asking where is the third groom, Nabid. But Nabid, despite being a brother of the other two, is not as extrovert as them. In fact, among the three of them, he has the least number of close friends, and that is why they are nowhere to be found when the time is supposed to be thrown out into the river. Aside from this reason, he is a military man who is on active duty while he took a leave for the special occasion of his life. Thus, being in the military, one of the first lessons that he must have learned is survival, and you can blame him for using his military skill to evade being thrown out into the river. And so, at this point in time, the convoy has to move forward to the homes of the brides, because Nabid is nowhere to be found. He must have been hiding amongst his relatives in one of those vehicles to avoid being pulled out and be thrown into the river. As you can see now, Yasser the groom is still clad in wet clothes arriving at his bride's residence, accompanied by his best friends. At this very moment, relatives of his bride have been eagerly waiting for his arrival. This part of the wedding is one of the most important. This is where the relatives of the bride formally recognize the groom's integration into their family. A wedding in this village, and even in the whole of Pakistan, is not just a union of two individuals, but two families, and even extended families of both sides. This area where a wedding is held is the bride's family receiving room. For this occasion, this guest house is only intended for male guests, A woman is not expected to appear in this area when men are gathering. As you can see, this typical village receiving area has charpai, or traditional bed made of wood and hemmed strings, where everyone can sit on. A typical Pashtun house like this uses charpais instead of chairs. Oftentimes, the charpai is also used as dining bed because they also eat on top of it. This time, firecrackers are starting to signal the next important part for Maksud. As we can see now, a char pie is now being readied and put in the middle of the lawn. They are covering it with a piece of cloth where the groom and his friends and relatives shall mount on it and jump until the char pie breaks down. As you can see now, guys, the groom Maksud, already in his formal wedding outfit, has already mounted the charpai. At this very moment, well-wishers are putting on the sira, or a traditional wedding garland adorned with Pakistani rupees, or banknotes in varying denominations, on the groom. These garlands also serve as gifts for the groom. As you can see here, all three brothers, Maksud, Yasir, and Navid, mounted on the charpai for the final breaking down of the charpai. The other two brothers, Navid and Yasir, both have the respective charpais in the respective homes of their brides. However, for lack of time, we failed to get footages of them. Of course, any wedding in this village is not complete without eating. When the grooms were going to get their brides, these people in the mess hall were busy preparing food for everyone. Every occasion like this, a team of cooks from the relatives of the male side are assigned to help in this very important task. However, an immediate question begs to be answered here. Perhaps one may ask if these wedding practices are Islamic by nature, since all of these villages are Muslims. To answer this question, we need to go back as far as thousands of years ago. As we all know, Pakistan, before becoming Islamic Republic, was formerly a part of the old India, where Hindu religious practices were a dominant influence. After Pakistan became independent, not all Hindu practices left Pakistan and went to India. Some of those remain. The throwing of the groom into the river and breaking the charpai are just one of those practices rooted in the Hindu culture. After all, Pakistanis by ancestral heritage are actually Indians, but only get mixed with the Persian and Arab heritage. Indeed, we are truly happy with the simple village life of ours. However, things have changed for quite some time now. Many of our gallant young men have searched for greener pasture and have left our village to work in places like Dubai and Saudi Arabia. Perhaps This village of ours, despite its abundant water resources and fertile soil, is no longer that green at all for those folks who have left us. But one thing for sure, whether our villages come and go, when early winter comes, there will always be a happy and festive wedding in our village. In fact, in this very season, a wedding happens in this village almost every other day. And yes, I've just received another invitation for next week's wedding. See you there!